Hi, as we continue with taking our tea, we do understand that this is a very busy time, especially for the media and media representation. There are many activities that are taking place, and therefore would not like to waste more time, but just call the meeting to order. I believe that we have all registered, and at the registration desk, where we'll get the details of all of us. And we want just to appreciate you for coming and for being here with us to share the findings of Afrobarometer survey that was conducted in last year in November. As we go along, I want to just welcome you all to this forum and to say how delighted we are on behalf of Afrobarometer and the University of Nairobi for gracing this important event for us, and we do not take your presence here for granted. So feel most welcome. I think as a way of introduction, I would like to request the AB Kenya team members to stand wherever you are. AB Afrobarometer team members, Kenya team. We'll be hearing more about this. I can see Dr. Otele. Where is Dr. Dr. Barasa? Please stand up. Who else is there? Dr. Onyango, uko kwa chai. But anyway, let me also appreciate the presence of the co-partner team members. Please take your seat. Thank you. Would like to appreciate the co-partner team, and I will request them just to stand up to be seen by our participant. The core team, we have Professor Winnie Mitula, Abel Oyuke, Simon Kodiaga, and Anne Okello. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll get to introduce others. We have a group of our students from University of Nairobi, either from IDS, from economics, from political science, and public administration. If you're there, kindly stand up so that we can see, particularly those who are also involved in the data collection element of this project. Do you have any? All right, please stand up so that we can see you. Only Nafula. That's okay, at least we have recognized your presence. Thank you very much. We have University of Nairobi staff members, and we're really happy that even the academic member of staff have created time to attend to this. If you are University of Nairobi staff members, kindly stand up so that we can recognize your presence. Thank you. Thank you very much, even our media team. We really grateful. Let's appreciate them. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have colleagues from USIU. We are partnering in providing AB work. I see Dr. Joki Wamai in the house. Do we have others from USIU? Do we have other people coming or other staff coming from USIU? Maybe they are still on the way. Please, let's appreciate USIU for partnering with the University of Nairobi in this event. Thank you very much. Do we have members from civil society organization? If you're there, CSO, could we have you stand up? Members of civil society organization. Oh, Paul, now that you are there, do you have the mic and we can hear from where they're from? Do we have representation from the government? Even you get a mic and tell us who you are. This one mic over there, isn't it, my brother? All right. Civil society, organization, government, anyone from the ministry? All right, please greet us, tell us who you are.
Hello,
Hi.
Good morning. I am representative of the National Taxpayers Association.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All youth here. Okay, 1 minute. Simon, you may help me with this mic, and I hope we can get. Yeah, just give it to her.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Sylvia Katua, and I'm a program officer at Mzalendo Trust.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for that. We have good representation of media houses, and we really thank you for this. We are led by University of Nairobi TV, and I do believe that we have other representation from the media houses. So we can give a chance to one of them to greet us. Who will do this? The media. So that as you take information, we also know who we are. Hakuna mtu wa media anataka kuongea? All right.
Sikuwa nataka kuzungumza lakini Simon ameniangazia.
Yes.
Mimi naitwa Obuya, natoka Royal Media Services, Radio Department. Na tuko hapa wengi tu. Sidhani kama wanapenda kujiintroduce sana watu wa media. Asante.
Nashukuru sana. Thank you. Nashukuru kwa kuja kwenu. Sijui kama kuna mtu yeyote ambao sijataja kwa group. We may not have time to introduce everybody, giving a mic to everyone. All right. I'm being directed mic to you. Please introduce yourself, madam.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Victoria Kwamboka. I'm a research assistant at the Institute of Economic Affairs.
Thank you very much. We work very closely with Kwame, right, and other colleagues in AIA. Thank you for coming. All right, I don't think we have anyone else that I've left out. So my name is Paul Kamau. We'll be interacting. But I want to take this opportunity to invite my colleague, my director, and the co-partner director for Afrobarometer East African region to give remarks, opening remarks on behalf of the University of Nairobi, on behalf of Afrobarometer, and officiate the opening of this session before we can get to the discussion about the result. Let's put our hands together for Professor Winnie Mitula. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. We call him PK, Paul Kamau, Dr. Professor Kamau. Thank you. I really want to begin by appreciating all of you. And somebody has said the media doesn't want to talk, but we know the media talks. Only they decide when to talk. So we still wait. We'll hear what you talked about what we have talked. So thank you very much. I have a very hard task because first I have to be a Kaninga. How many of you know Kaninga? Professor Karuti Kaninga? Hands up. Good. If you know Karuti Kaninga, first I have to be a Karuti Kaninga, who is the director of the Institute for Development Studies. Professor Kaninga was not able to be with us. I think we thought that we'd also be kind of online, but the mode that we have cannot allow him to be with us. But I want to assure you that he's with us and he's relayed his words, and I'm standing in for him and also for myself. Where I want to begin is where IDS is with this forum or with the research of AB. We've come a long way. Abel, is it 18 years? We are on the 18th or 20th? Heading to 20th year. Unfortunately or unfortunately, this Abel, who will talk after I've talked, to tell you more about AB, has been there throughout. So we kind of house the Afrobarometer. And Abel will be talking more about Afrobarometer. Afrobarometer is big. It's covering 37 countries plus. But we house the Eastern African region, which is about 9 countries. So when I stand here, I'm standing in because I'm doubling up. I happen to be a Kenyan, and I also happen to oversee the region. So, and then I happen to be at the Institute for Development Studies, which houses the directorship for the region. So we really, at that level, I really want to welcome into this forum, more so the dissemination of what the last 2 years, the usual panel data that we collect. Every 2 years, Afrobarometer does a survey, every 2 years. So for those of you who don't know, you can take some variables and look at how Kenya has been performing on that variable over 20 years now, which is really something. You can check how people think about particular critical issues, service delivery, name it. You will hear more when my team, Abel, comes to talk. So at IDS, IDS is part of the University of Nairobi, but it is a research institute. So we majorly do research, but we also have postgraduates. We have masters and PhD, and in recent times, of course, we need to tell you, you've known that university is reforming. There are reforms going on, so our program, our master's and PhD program is likely to go to economics or political science, but for now is in economics. But our research remains. We are still a research institute. We have research going on, and you are all welcome because IDS affiliates people who are not at the university. You can have research and get affiliated to the University of Nairobi through IDS and continue doing your research. So we are happy today to be here to at least share with you what we are seeing, as the opinions of Kenyans. One thing I want to also say is that when we share public opinion, what we like to think about is what PK will talk about, is how that information was collected and the solidness of the information collected. And also we like to say upfront that Afrobarometer is not partisan. We are not partisan. We barely collect the information and bring them on board. And as we know across the region in the 37 countries, sometimes people are not happy with the outcome, which is again normal. If you are not happy with a particular outcome, is normal. But for me as a researcher, lack of happiness is usually very good for me because it makes people think. If you are not happy about how services are being delivered in Kenya, then you have to think of what alternative ways can be done so that services improve. So I'm happy that we will be able to discuss. We are just giving you a glimpse, you will hear. We are only sharing very basic, 0. What PK of data are you sharing today? 0. Not more than 0.1. Good, good. So it's good for all of you to know that what we are sharing today is not more than 0.1. The database is big. We welcome any of you who can look at the instrument. If you see a particular variable you are interested in, as media, as CSO, as a scholar, get to the internet. You can interact with that data, generate what you want. If you have difficulty, you link up with us. Is Balongo here today? He's in Uganda. He's supporting Malawi. Okay, we have a data manager as well in-house for the region, but when you have difficulty in interacting with that platform at afrobarometer.org, then you can contact us. Even Abel here will help you. Another thing I would want to say upfront, in each and every country, we welcome people to invite us to talk deeper on a particular item. Because when you will listen to the findings, you will find that the findings, we don't go deeper into analysis. But now the next step is to have what we call dispatches, which tries to interpret. And then the final one is to have a journal article, which goes deeper into digging. Why this? For today, you might say, so what? This is just an obvious thing. But you wait for dispatches, wait for the working papers, wait for the journal articles. So we welcome you to call on us, link us up with others who could or are interested in this data. This data is public. It's not bought. Even the service you get when you contact us to facilitate or to help come and be in your round table, in your cohorts or peers, is not paid. We'll just come, share it free because it's public and is funded by a number of partners and is meant to be free. So I want to stop at this level and call on Abel to elaborate more on Afrobarometer, how it's structured, who he is as Abel in the region, and who the rest are elsewhere in the other countries that he takes care of. Thank you.
Asante sana, Prof. Good morning. Please, let's have another clap for Professor Mitula. Thank you so much, Prof, for beginning the session for us. As been said, my name is Abel Oyuke. I work at the University of Nairobi, based at the Institute for Development Studies. And I work as the program manager in charge of the East African region. In the interest of time, I'll just give a few highlights about Afrobarometer, and for those of us who probably might have further interest, you can contact us, or we'll give you links through which you can get to know more about what we do. As I've said, I am in charge of the East African region. Afrobarometer largely has 3 regions. We have the Eastern Africa region that also supports the North Africa countries like Sudan and Egypt. We also have the West African region, which is coordinated from Ghana, from the CDD in Ghana. We also have the 3rd region, which is the Southern African region, which is coordinated from South Africa in Cape Town. Now, Afrobarometer, as it is, as Professor indicated, began in the year 1999. And we have been doing surveys in cycles of 2 years, after every 2 years, since 1999. As we speak now, last year we just completed 8 rounds of surveys. Those 8 rounds of surveys means that we have 8 different data points on all experiences and evaluations of Africans, what the Africans are thinking across all these countries. To date, we have covered, out of the, I think we have 53 countries in Africa, we have covered about 39 countries. And in this particular latest round of round 9, we are seeking and working very hard so that we bring 40 countries on board. The ultimate aim, really, is to ensure that we eventually cover all the countries in Africa. In terms of the structure, how we are distributed, I've just talked about the 3 regions and the regional offices which coordinate the activities of Afrobarometer. IDS, Institute for Development Studies, here across at the University of Nairobi, is one of what we call the co-partner. A co-partner actually facilitates, provides program support and technical support to all the other countries in those particular regions. Under IDS, the East Africa, we have 9 different countries, including Ethiopia, Zambia, Malawi, Burundi, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and many other countries, Sudan, Egypt, as I've indicated. The same model applies on the other regions that I've talked about. In terms of program management, our main office, or what we'll call the headquarters, is based in CDD, Ghana, where all the activities are coordinated from. So this particular exercise, this particular assignment, this particular network began in 1999, as indicated, with researchers that were working on issues on Africans. Some of them were actually non-Africans, but eventually, initially it was based in the US. Eventually, we got to an Africanization moment, and we brought the whole framework, the whole structure, the whole project back to Africa, and that's where we're saying it is based in CDD Ghana. Now, just to let you know briefly about the data sets that we have, like adding on to what Prof has said, the data that is produced by Afrobarometer is a public good. It is a free good that we provide to Africans. It provides the experiences, the evaluations of what Africans are thinking. The project provides, but actually the world's leading source of information on what Africans actually are thinking. So if you want from donors, from policymakers, from policy influencers, from the academia, from the media, from activists, from advocates, people who want to know what Africans are thinking so that they can actually engage government and institutions of governance across all countries in Africa, this is where to source that data. The data is obtained, is obtained from across the entire country. In each and every country that we go, we work with the Bureau of Statistics of those particular countries to be able to ensure that the science that informs the work that we do is actually corroborated by the statistics offices in those particular countries. So it is a nationwide survey based on, Professor Kamau will talk about, based on a sample of 2,400 people here in Kenya, of course 1,200 in some other countries, but this is carried out across all these countries. What I also need to point out is that we use, across all the countries, we use a standard method for carrying out our surveys. We use a standard tool that we use in asking questions across all the countries that we work in. What this means is that the particular variables that we are going to talk about here, the issues that we are going to discuss here, we can compare those very issues across with other countries in Tanzania, East African region, in West Africa, and all the countries, the 39 countries where we are working. And we are also able to carry out over time analysis to be able to compare some of these issues that we are talking about, how they have moved from the time that we began in 1999 up to the moment we have here. So this is just a preview, a short preview of what we are, what is it that we do, and we would want to urge you that when you have interest, please visit our website. It's www.afrobarometer.org, and you'll be able to get as much information and how you can also relate and interact with our data set, including carrying out analysis even when you are not specialized or trained in statistical packages. We have a platform that enables people who are interested but might not have the knowledge of statistics to be able to use this data. I think I want to stop there in the interest of time and invite Professor Kamau to get us really into the topical issues of the day. We have thematic areas that we are going to share today, but as Professor Mitula noted, we have quite a lot of issues that are carried in this particular tool, the variable, that if you visit our website and look at the tool, you will be able to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together again for Abel. Thank you for that clarity, and you have really made my work easy. Once again, now that we are settled, I'd like to reintroduce the AB team so that in case you have a query, you have an issue that you'd like to be addressed, it's easier to get one of these. Simon, do we have the mic? Bring the mic here. Would like to hear at least a word of greeting from the team, the Kenyan team. As I said, my name is Paul Kamau, and based at IDS, University of Nairobi. As you've heard, IDS is a national partner as well as the co-partner, but these are two separate teams. And therefore, this forms the three leading problems in Kenya that Kenyans would like to see government addressing. So let me clarify that this will not add up to 100 because we are looking at a mention of a problem as a percentage of all mentions. When we look at urban-rural divide, we see a very significant difference. One is that rural residents or rural respondents were more concerned about service delivery. So they are looking at delivery of public services as a major problem, and we'll be coming to that. Right? Are we together? All right. They are talking of services, they're talking of food shortages, while the urban population is more concerned with unemployment, corruption, crime, insecurity, as well as political rights and ethnic tension. When we look at the gender divide, then we are seeing that men and women, in terms of the problem they would like to see being addressed by the government, there's quite a huge, differentiation. While men are concerned with issues of corruption, crime, insecurity, and unemployment, women on the other side are concerned with the management of the economy, education, and health as major problem, and we'll be looking at that. Overall, when we identify this problem and we want to see how we can rate the government in terms of addressing this problem, we see very, very poor rating. One is that in terms of creating job, only 14% who indicated that government was doing either very well or fairly well in addressing this. Improving the standards of living, meaning that 86% of Kenyans did not approve what government was doing. Living standards at 16%, and management of the economy 17%, and fighting corruption at 22%. So that means that the difference between what I'm mentioning here and 100 is what said the government was not doing very well. And that is the reason why we have a poor rating overall of government in terms of performance. I hope I can move this. Right. And this I alluded to earlier, talking about the mentions of the 10 leading problems that we see Kenyans would like address: management of the economy, corruption, unemployment, health, crime, education, water supply, food shortages, infrastructure, and last but not least, among the 10 leading one is poverty or destitution. There are many other problems and that were mentioned, but with a less than not the leading 10. And here we're mentioning just some of them, which include drought, democracy and political rights, electricity, services, rules and taxes, agriculture, just to mention that our list is quite exhaustive, but we are only focusing on the first 10 problems that they were mentioned. This is an important finding, that when you look at our data from 2014 to 2021, that's a period of 7 years, when we did different rounds, the major problems that are leading the first 10 seem to be very consistent. They feature in the table of 10, the leading 10. For example, you can see how Kenyans are concerned with corruption. In 2016, it was number 1. In 2019, it was number 2. In 2021, it's still number 2, right? Look at unemployment. Again, across time, it's ranging between number 2 and number 3. meaning that there's a lot that needs to be done in order for us to address, or the government to address this problem. It's a pressing issue among Kenyans. Look at crime and insecurity. Number 5 now was number 1 in 2014. And although management of the economy is featuring, perhaps because of what we're going through as a country, it has always ranked high among the top 10, number 6 or the other period, but this time came number 1. So this tells us that in terms of Kenyans' perception with regards to major problem, there's a very high level of consistency across time. These data that can be compared also with other countries. Now, we look at the problems, and we want to see the leading 10 problems across gender, and this is what I was saying. If you look at the management of the economy, it's more of rural, or the rural population mentioned it more. Corruption, it's more urban. That's what that slide is saying. Look at unemployment, again, is urban compared to 29 for the rural population, right? Education and water supply. This leads us to see that the concerns of the rural population is more about service delivery, right? Improving the standard of living, while perhaps the urban population is more interested or is more concerned with governance issue. When it comes to gender, again, you see that there's a variation in terms of what our female respondents were alluding to as leading problems in terms of management of the economy at 47 by women respondents compared to 36 among the male respondents. Corruption, I'm just using a few, for example, just to highlight, that is that 32 for women, so perhaps to women, to female respondents, this does not feature as a major problem, maybe compared to the men respondent. Crime and insecurity, you can see a 20% for male and 27% for female. So that leads us to say that when we're looking at problems that need to be addressed, the huge variation between the two segments of population. I'll not dwell so much on this, but one of the things that we are seeing, that based on the education level, people look at different problems. And therefore, when you're targeting, when you're looking for how to address this problem, we cannot ignore. And this will be coming out more critical in our next presentation. So we are looking at the 10 major problems, and let me say about corruption. Look at corruption. It's at 52% among the post-secondary education. The elites see corruption as more of a problem, right? Water supply, look at the 33% who are not, who do not have formal education. And all these tell us that even as we are talking about the general problem, we need to do targeting as a government in order to address problems that serve a particular population. Again, we can look at this in terms of population distribution by age cohort. And again, we can almost tell that the problems like of corruption appear to be more mentioned by the youth, right? These are the people who are feeling that corruption is a major problem. If you look at that, let me mention the unemployment. Again, it's more of a problem among the youth, and that's what they would like to see. And in this slide, we're seeing variation according to age cohort, right? We know how manipulatable perhaps the youth become as we near election with many promises. As we get to the close, let me mention about the rating of government in terms of addressing this problem. And these are the rating, the orange. I hope I'm not color blind as such, but you can see, let me look at fighting corruption. When we look at fighting corruption, only 22% say that the government is handling the problem well, right? Well, 77 they indicate that the government is not doing well in addressing corruption. Creating jobs, only 14% against 85% of Kenyans who think that government is doing well in terms of addressing this problem. Of course, it will not add up to 100 because we disregard those who said they did not have an answer, or they did not know how to answer this. That's why you see our statistics are not adding to 100, because of they don't know, they could be refusals to answer, and many other reasons. But it's a small percentage. If you look, we are almost getting to 99%. Again, a lot of variation in government rating when we look at the across period. But one of the issues that is coming out clearly is that the confidence in government handling of major economic issues is declining. Look at this in 2019. This a time we were at high 42, but now only 14 who say government is doing well. Look at the variation from in fighting corruption, 37 in 2019 to 22. So overall, reducing crime, 57 to 44%. So it means that the confidence that Kenyans have in government addressing this problem is declining across time. So what can we say as a way of concluding this presentation is that as we gear up for election, there are so many promises that are happening, but the government that will carry the day is a government that understands the problems that Kenyans have and not just mention them in their manifesto, but provide tangible roadmap for addressing this problem. Two, this consistency in terms of the problems that Kenyans have identified, right, as major problems that need to be addressed, or problems that are affecting their survival. And when you look at this, they all revolve around governance and management of our resources. So we need to be clear in terms of how this can be addressed by the government that are going to carry the day. When we look at the gender, the gender divide, the rural-urban, we see a lot of differentiation in terms of what Kenyans would like to see being addressed. While in rural areas, we have a call for service delivery. In urban areas, we're more concerned about governance and security issue. So in summary, what we'd like to say is that as we try to come up with the many issues that government need to address, we need to see how the rating for different categories of Kenyans is coming out in terms of the priority areas, and look at also our agenda, Vision 2030, government manifestos, to see whether they resonate with public need and provide provision of public service. So I want to stop there, and please, in the interest of time, you can write your questions or comment so that we can hear the second presentation before we can have Q&A coming, before many of us can maybe exit for other meetings. So allow me to invite Dr. Oscar Otele to take us to the next phase, to the next presentation, and then we can have Q&A led by Gideon. Thank you very much.
It's now okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Now, it's my turn to share the findings on support for multi-party competition and trust in our institution. Now, what do we expect from my presentation? At a glance, our findings indicate that 3/4 of Kenyans support election as the best way to choose their leaders. And of course, there's also a strong belief that many political parties are needed to give voters a real chance. Now, the other key finding you expect from my presentation is that almost 2/3 of citizens do not mind one party always winning and governing the country, as long as people vote in a free and fair election. And the other finding at a glance is almost 3/4 of Kenyans say a public health emergency like COVID, what we've been going through, do not justify postponing election. Now, you allow me then to move straight to elections and political parties findings. Now, as you can see from that projection, our findings indicate that a majority of Kenyans support existence of many political parties for the country's electoral governance. But if you look at the support across socio-economic resources, the demographics, it is interesting to note that the support is overwhelming high across gender. You can see men at 80 and women at 76. The support is equally high across rural-urban divide. Urban at 78 and rural at 79. It is also high across age, as you can see. Youth at 77, and from between 36 to 55 is 79, while above 55 is 80. Look at education. We can see no formal education at 63, primary 77, secondary 79, and post-secondary at 80. Just back to my first projection on preferred method for choosing leaders. Our findings indicate that although elections sometimes produce bad results, a majority of Kenyans remain steadfast in their support for a regular, open, and honest election in choosing their leaders. Very interesting, and what we can see is consistency in support for regular, open, and honest election, and the previous finding on support for many political parties. And if you put this in Kenyan context, we've just had 6th election since the return of multi-party in the early 90s. And so what we are seeing here, as the country continues to hold competitive election, a majority of Kenyans seem to support that regular, open, and honest election is the way to go. Another finding is on power changing hands between parties, and of course, rule by one party. Are we seeing a situation, what are we seeing in terms of support for turnover in a ruling party? Our findings indicate that a sizable majority of Kenyans do not mind one party always winning and governing the countries, as long as people vote in a free and fair election. Interesting finding, because what we are seeing here is what Kenyans perhaps are more interested is in essentially the ability of the ruling party to perform. So long as the ruling party is able to deliver, so it can continue to stay in power. But also, the trend in political parties identification. Our findings indicate that a half of citizens say they feel close to a political party. Now, look at that. 749, and this is 2021, coming down from 65%. So that downward trend gives us an indication that our political parties are not really rooted in our societies, because every time we have seen, political parties evolving, new coalition forming, and therefore we're seeing Kenyans not in a position, a majority of Kenyans are not in a position to clearly identify themselves with a particular political affiliation. Now, let's look at election and electoral process. Now, our key findings show that 6 in 10 Kenyans say election do not ensure that representatives to the National Assembly reflect the views of voters. Look at that chart on that projection. So what we are seeing here is that there is a majority of Kenyans feel that they are not well represented. Now, only a slim majority, that is 51, view election as an effective tool for holding their leaders to account, as you can see on that slide. Another interesting finding from our survey regards voter turnout in the last election. Now, regarding the vote turnout in 2017, our findings indicate that just about 2/3 of Kenyans turned out to vote in the 2017 election. So we ask whether somebody participated in either, we had two elections, the first in August 2017 and then the repeat in October 2017. So the question was if the respondent participated in either of the two. And as you can rightly see on the board, that is the 2/3 of Kenyans saying that they turned out to vote in that particular election. We note that the turnout was relatively high among men. As you can see, at 73% compared to women at 63%. Now, vote turnout amongst the youth, look at age between 18 and 35, was significantly low, when compared to the adult who actually displayed massive turnout. We can see between 35 and 55 is 91, and over 55 is 95%. So what you're seeing here is at least 9 in 10 adults turned out to vote. Another interesting finding as far as demographic group is concerned is on education. Now, vote turnout was also sizable among Kenyans with basic education. Look at that. No formal education at 80, and primary education at 95. So what we are seeing here is our findings indicate people with basic education, turning out to vote as compared to Kenyans with post-secondary education. We have secondary at 60 and post-secondary at 65%. So quite interesting finding there, the turnout amongst those with the basic, and even look at the rural-urban divide. If you look at those in urban areas, turning out to vote at 60% compared to urban dwellers at 71%. The other finding that also has an implication on voter turnout is on the fear of political intimidation or violence, as you can see there. And the question that we asked was, respondents were asked during the last national election campaign, how much did you personally fear becoming victim of political intimidation or violence? So if we put all that a lot, sometime a little bit, it's coming to close to 52, which is on the higher side as far as fear for political intimidation or violence, and that has implication because, as you're aware, the purpose of political intimidation or violence is actually to deter, vote turnout, to sort of create that fear, make citizens fearful and not turn out to vote in large number. And that is an interesting finding, given that this, in August, the country will be heading to election. Now, on whether public health emergency justify postponing election, our findings note that a large majority of Kenyans demonstrate unwillingness to trade democratic freedom, such as election, postponement in favor of the government intervention in public health emergency. Of course, there was that debate at some point whether, with the COVID situation, whether the country will hold election this year or postponed. And we saw in a number of African countries, some countries actually went ahead to hold election. Uganda did, Tanzania did, among other countries. Let us also see the findings on citizens' trust in our institution. Now, our key findings as we prepare towards August 2022 general election, we note that there is a huge trust deficit in the electoral body. The electoral body, our independent election boundary commission, where more than a half say that they have trust in IBC, just a little or not at all. This can be seen clearly in that slide. As you can see, those institutions listed there. There is a religion institutions, there's army, there's court of law, there's traditional leaders, and president. Now, IBC is coming at number what? Is it number 6? With 54%. Now, of course, traditionally, religious leaders have taken the lead in terms of, the confidence level that citizens have in religious institutions. But also interesting to note that Kenya Defense Force, Army, is coming number 6. It's coming at number 2 with 66%. So what we are seeing here is recent involvement of KDF in a civilian assignment perhaps could help us to understand the confidence level that we are seeing on the rise. And if you look at that, this is citizens' trust in election commission, which I talked about earlier. You can see, look at trust in governance institution. We can look at the institutions projected there: president, parliament, IBC, police, courts of law. So where that trust deficit in IBC is low, but if you look at previous ratings, 2014, 2016, 2019, and 2021, it has gone up by 5 if you compare with 2019 findings. And probably we can look at the way the citizens perceive these institutions in terms of their ability to perform their constitutional mandate, but also more importantly, their perception of the office holders. You can see at some point, there was a turnover of commissioners at IBC, and that might have, eroded public confidence in that particular institution. So, what are our conclusion as far as this presentation is concerned? Now, we conclude as follows: that a majority of Kenyans want many political parties to give voters real choice in selecting their leaders. Another key conclusion is that a majority say elections do not ensure that MPs reflect the views of voters. Another key conclusion is that although the youth constitute the largest voting bloc at 51%, according to IEBC report, that is 2017, it's likely that the number will go high in just concluded voters registration. What we are seeing here is vote turnout remain lowest among the youth. The second last conclusion is despite the ravage of the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya, a large majority of Kenyans say public health emergency do not justify postponing election. Lastly, fewer than half of Kenyans express trust in the IEBC, even as it prepares to conduct this year's election. Thank you very much.
The session on Q&A, would like to say that we are on Twitter, and we have several Twitter handles that you can follow us on, at Afrobarometer, at IDS_UONBI, and also hashtag Afrobarometer UONBIKE. So you'll see the results as they being channeled, and we believe that you can also use these to sending a tweet that other people who are not able to be here can follow. Abel, you have a better handwriting than me. So Abel will put it on the board so that it can be seen. But let's now invite Gideon to take us through the session on Q&A. Any issue, we are a big team, and we are happy to address this, any query, any comment, and over to you, Dr.
Thanks a lot, Prof. Thanks a lot. Yes, you've seen the data that we presented to you. You know, in my society, I have to invite people to your home, and you've given them some food. In as much as you will not ask them directly to comment on the quality of food, but you will really need that feedback, because you go through a lot of problems or a lot of challenges to do that. And now, concerning our data, we are now receiving the questions that you might have on the both presentation made by Professor Kamau and Dr. Tele. So the media people, despite saying that you don't like talking, we really want you now to talk. And in the meantime, we'll also ask you to just tweet, following the handle that Abel is putting forward. And if possible, the one responsible for this can just put it somewhere there so that it is clearer for those who like to tweet and tag as many institutions as possible, or actors. Right. Yes, so I'll start with you, then you. So let's start with the gentleman.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe it's still morning. From the presentations that I've seen here, my name is Wahungu
Yes.
Joseph.
From
Radio from Milele FM,
thanks.
formerly Radio Omini. I just wanted to know from the two presenters, towards 2022, we have just seen that many people were not coming out even to be registered as voters. So going from your findings in 2017, we have seen that many people, only 63% of Kenyans came out to vote. Are we likely to see the same scenario in 2022 that even in, putting in mind that there has been voter registration apathy, are we going to see, is there a likelihood that the number of people who will come out to vote will be less this year or more? I would also want to know from your survey, you talked about concerns that Kenyans have, but I would have wanted to know if you factored regions. Did you go, did you check, did you look at regions? For example, what are the concerns of, Kenyans in maybe coast region? And are they similar to those in maybe western region and the other areas? And then you talked about people not, the trust for IEBC being relatively low. What then does it portend toward the election? Are we likely to see a situation whereby people will not believe in the results that IEBC may announce in 2022? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then I hope Dr. Tele and Prof, you've noted down. Yes. Yes, the lady.
Thank you very much. My name is Molen Onyango. I'm representing WFD. WFD is Westminster Foundation for Democracy. I work with the programs team in a program called Kenya Inclusive Political Parties Program. We advocate for inclusivity of people with disabilities. So my question is going to be aligned to that. So from the population that you sampled, I'm interested to know what's the percentage of people with disabilities and what are the issues concerning them that came out. Then, number two, like after this survey, you've got the very good findings, then what? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, Joshua.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Muteti, and I'm here courtesy of National Taxpayers Association. When I was looking at the data being presented, what was coming into my mind is how these problems relate with taxation, all right? The motivation to participate in politics, the motivation to engage government in terms of governance and even relate to a political party. So then I looked at the most one of the most important problems was corruption that ranked second after the management of economy. I would just like to understand, do we have a data that represent, because one of the top ranking issue is management of the economy. What was the metrics that was informing this particular issue? And when we say corruption, what are some of the variables that you use to demonstrate that it is corruption? Do we have the aspect of taxpayer feeling the burden of we pay taxes, and then instead of government managing the loss of these taxes, the mismanagement of this fund, the misappropriation of these funds, So what are some of these variables that inform these particular problems? Because most of the problems that I see, they are facing in the side of government supply side, education, water, health, employment, and all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Any other question? Oh yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Afrobarometer and UN, for these findings. So first, of course, I want to say thank you for carrying out this research, which I think is very timely. My name is Sylvia Katwa, and as I said, I'm a program officer at Mzalendo Trust. Mzalendo Trust is Kenya's only parliamentary monitoring organization, and we're also non-partisan. So my question will, of course, mostly focus on Dr. Otele's presentation, whom we have also worked before with. First, of course, there's some comments to make. It's very interesting to see that members of parliament are not seen to be able to represent people's views, which is tragic because that is why they're going to parliament. And so I think it speaks to a larger issue of public participation and how this public participation can be, cascaded down not only from the National Assembly and the Senate, but also to county assemblies, and how these views are taken into consideration by members of staff of parliament and the members of parliament themselves. So I think there need to be in place various systems. Perhaps as organizations that are all here, we need to be able to see how best we can push for the bills, the public participation bills that are both in the Senate and the National Assembly, to pass so that there are systematic structures for public participation, so that we don't have this sort of feeling by people that their views are not taken into consideration. Secondly, on the issue of political parties, and that most people feel that the political parties need to provide a platform for real choices in electing leaders. Again, I think this speaks to an issue to do with especially nominations at the nomination level, the party primaries. So political parties, perhaps if we had some in the room, we will have gotten views to see how best, or perhaps you can have a separate dissemination forum just for them, even in partnership with Mzalendo, just to be able to see how best they can be able to engage with people. The manifestos they have, are they relating to the kind of work, not the kind of work, but the kind of issues that people are facing? What do people want? And so perhaps with that, maybe I should mention that Mzalendo is trying to come up with some sort of system just to be able to see, as a voter and as a political parties, do your ideals match what is in your manifesto? And thus, we try to see which political party is best placed for you. But perhaps that's a separate conversation we can have with IDS and Afrobarometer. Then lastly, would be on the question of political party identification as a question. The question was asking whether you feel close to a political party. Perhaps you could outline what that would mean. Was it on the basis of a manifesto? Was it on the basis of this political party, it dominates in the region I'm from. So by virtue of that, I have to support that political party. And it would be really interesting to see, the kind of responses that people give on that particular question. As for IEBC, even as we gear for the elections, I think it would be important to also have a separate session with them, share these findings with them so that they're able to know moving forward that this is what people feel, and perhaps you can bring in various actors and stakeholders to be able to just strengthen their systems, their institutional systems, and even their staff, so that we cure that issue of lack of trust. So thank you very much, and thank you, Afrobarometer.
Thank you too, thank you. Yes.
Yes, my name is Dickens Ngicho from National Media Group. As you guys were trying to examine the confidence of citizens in different institutions, we saw that religious leaders are those that is the group that most citizens or Kenyans are confident in. And when we all know how there's increased affiliation among religious leaders to some political parties, especially regional political parties. But we saw that these parties that we know most of them are affiliated to come at the bottom of those that Kenyans have confidence in. Did you maybe get to examine or question why these disparities happened?
Thank you very much. The gentleman on this table again.
Niruhusu niongea Kiswahili.
Yeah, tafadhali.
Jina langu ni Robert Chacha, mimi ni mwanahabari kutoka Look Up TV. Moja kati ya vigezo ama masuala ambayo umezungumzia ni kuhusiana na watu kuja katika kupiga kura, na umezungumzia kuhusiana na vijana. Swali langu ni je, katika data ambayo umeonyesha kwamba waume ni wengi ambao wanaenda kupiga kura ikilinganishwa na wanawake. Sasa swali yangu ni je, labda katika pilika zenu za kuuliza kuhusu data, mngeuliza vijana mbona hamwendi kupiga kura ama mchukui kura kulingana na data yenu, na ni mambo yapi ambayo yanasababisha wao wasiende kupiga kura mwisho wa siku, kwa mfano kama uchaguzi ambao unakuja? Asante.
Asante sana. I was just about to ask you people to also ask about questions on youth finding. Thank you very much. Asante sana kwa swali lako. Yes. Yes. And you.
Good morning. My name is Dan Samoma. I just wanted to seek some clarification on the trust issues with IBC. Is it trust on the commission as an institution, or is it trust on the commissioners? Was there that distinction between the commission and the commissioners? Then second, you said that there's a high level of trust in the military. So are you trying to drive a narrative that Kenyans support militarization of the public service? What we have seen with the NMS, Kenya Meat Commission, and so on. And if yes, what is the stand? What, is that good for our democracy, this militarization of the public service? Then the last question, on the key findings made by Dr. Tele, you say that more than 78% of Kenyans say that country needs many political parties to ensure that voters have real choices. So maybe I would just want to know how do we define many? Because from the data at the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, I think there are already more than 70 registered political parties in Kenya. And I think with the emergence of these NOPEO and there has been emergence of very many regional political parties. If you go to the based on regions, I think in every region, almost every governor is coming up with a political party. So how do we operationalize the many? Because there's a feeling that what we have may be already too many, or is many 500, or is many more than 100. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. John Joka is my name, also from INDS. You said in the presentation earlier on that INDS is coordinating Eastern Africa. So my question is a comparison question, because the data is also gathered in Tanzania, the 12 Eastern Africa countries, I don't know how many, under the African Union. So I wanted to ask how we compare, but also we need to be careful. Last week in a different forum, we were told by Professor Kanyinga that we should not be comparing ourselves with Uganda, Tanzania, and East Africa. We should be comparing with Malaysia, Singapore, those guys who we were together with, and they have taken off. Do we have any indication of where we are? Because probably we could be doing very well around, but very poorly when we think about our Singapore friends and Malaysia and others. Do we have that indication? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether Prof. and Dr. Otele, you will answer this before we pick more. Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay. Right. You want to start?
Yeah, thank you. And also counting the number of questions, I think I was the main target. Not because, I think it's because of the election and political parties in light of what we are preparing to undertake. Now, let me start by appreciating your questions. They are very useful questions that are going to build not just this presentation, but our final output. So let me start with the first question, touching on election. And the question went along the lines whether we are likely to see vote turnout in light of the presentation that I made on demographic variables. Now, our election turnout is determined by several factors. A, B, and in this particular presentation, we've only focused on socio-economic factors. And as you saw, we did gender, age, and what other variable? Education. There are other factors that I did not touch on, and this include, for example, even the extent of mobilization by political actors is also a factor that informs vote turnout. There's also the extent of competition in the election. Look at 2013, for example, compare 2013, compare 2017, the extent of competition in those two elections and what we are likely to have in 2022 will also, a variation in the extent of competition also determines vote turnout. Now, to just coming now straight to the question whether we are likely to see low turnout, and in my prediction, I will say those variables are likely to stand out in 2022 election. We're likely to see a situation where more men are voting than women. And we also need to appreciate that we have actually made significant milestone in terms of the number of women representation, 2013, 2017. And as more women are coming out to contest for elective position, that is likely to ignite that section of the population, seeing them coming out to vote. So we are likely to see more women if the number of their women leaders, rather women candidates, are coming out to contest for the position. We are also likely to see more urban, more rural. And if you can look at even the trend in our leading presidential candidate, the target, you can even count the rural counties they have visited in the last 6 months, and there's indication that they're actually targeting that segment of Kenyan society. Look at youth. It's interesting that they constitute largest voting bloc, yet the turnout is not impressive, and there could be explanation. The explanation perhaps will be, some of them just, sense of frustration, disillusionment with what's happening, governance issues, lack of employment. A number of youth are always in transition, moving from one area to another. So there's high mobility among youth population, and that has implication on, you find somebody registered in rural area, got an employment, got employed in Mombasa, in Nairobi, and that also has implication on their numbers. Education, still may also inform the turnout, and you have seen, the non-formal education, mostly these are the non-elite, and most of them feature, found in rural areas, and they are likely to come out and vote in the forthcoming election. Now, let me also respond to the issue of trust. Now, Danson, you ask a very important question, whether our findings on trust we disaggregated the perceived legitimacy, perceived authority in terms of the performance of IEBC as a constitutional body, or whether we were more interested in the performance of the commissioners. Now, we looked at, in totality, IEBC, as institution. Obviously, the commissioners are part of the, IEBC as the institution. So we were not able to, divide that. Now, the other question was on the political parties. And the political parties, if I can go to the specific findings on the political parties so that we are together in this. Now look at that. Does Kenya need many? No, it was on the support. Yes, this one, yes. Trends in political parties identification. And the question first was on what we meant by closeness. I want to believe we meant association or interaction with political parties if the respondent has had any activities. This could just be even visiting party offices or knowing party leaders or even having a handshake with a member of a political party. And so it's interesting that there is downward, trend in identification, political party identification. Quite revealing, and that could be related to a number of issues, especially at the election time. We have had issues to do with the nomination and fair nomination. And if you also look at the number of independent candidates, look at the numbers I got from IEBC. In 2013, we had 3,521 independent candidates. In 2017, that number increased by 250. Is it 250? But the number is 4,002 in 2017. We actually likely to see an increase in 2022. And that tells us something about our political parties. Maybe aspirants or, aspirants, they don't trust what's happening in political parties. Yet, political parties as key institutions, the winning party is expected to form the government, turn the manifesto into, policy action and manage our governance system. So it's quite revealing that many Kenyans actually seem to not to be too close to what's happening in political parties. And of course, as Sylvia, you've rightly mentioned, that also has to do with the extent of public participation, which again, where the Constitution requires public participation in virtually all governance issues, this question of public participation is really problematic. If you walk around in 47 counties, you realize that there is actually a major problem with public participation. Citizens tend to ask for, the seating allowance, even to question county budgets, to participate in planning, to attend county activities, and therefore you find that most citizens they are not involved in governance systems in a number of countries, and that is also reflective if they are not in a position to question things going around, then of course they will not be so close to other key institutions like political parties. Militarization of politics. The involvement of military in politics is not a bad idea. Remember long ago in African politics, coup actually as a result of under performance of the ruling government, and it was thought that military will come in to sort of fix the situation. So what we are seeing here, the involvement of military in civilian assignment we're actually seeing we improved service delivery. So if that is good for citizens, so why not even see the next time involvement in a strategic institution like maybe KPLC and other institutions. So I'll say it's not a bad idea to involve militarization of politics. Yes, Prof, thanks.
We have to kind of reflect, if the military is in place, how does it work? The military, when they're in place like NMS, they are not following the regular governance processes. You know, a regular governor would have to go through the county assembly and ensure that things are passed through the regular way, including their own executive team. But when you have a military, the protocols are very different. So I really wonder whether comparing the two, that one is doing well or the other is possible. But I agree with Oscar that they come in to fill a gap. But the issue is, if you are filling a gap with an entity that does not have the institutional setup that the one that will replace it will have, you are likely not still to get what you need. And I think it's something that Kenyans and the media who are here, we need to debate it and see why we would get a product, especially now that the public is seeing them as a good institution. And one thing, we have never used the army. We've never assessed them. So we can't give you trend analysis. But in the following years, we will give trend analysis to see whether this trust on the army is increasing or not. It's the first time we brought them in. But I think it's a debate that is really worth pursuing, because we have it at home in the name of NMS, in Kenya Meat Commission, the railway bit, they tried also to build the railway. There are a lot of things, but I am concerned more of the institutional, because this meeting is a lot on governance. If we look at it with a governance lens, what do we see? Is it a viable option? When the public no longer want to go by the political party system, but they are opting to go individually. That is now, Gideon and my colleague Oscar, is getting out of the normal institution. So the critical questions for Kenyans is this: are these institutions failing us? Because nobody tells us that we must have the institutions that are failing us. Probably we need to reboot and have other institutions that work for us. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Prof. And I think that then brings me to the end of my response. Prof, Kamau, thanks.
Thank you very much for this very insightful comment. I want to assure you that our team is on the ground and taking note of this, so that even what we may not be able to answer here and now, we can reflect on them as time goes by, and especially when we are doing what Professor Mitula called the dispatch, working papers and journal articles, where we can do more in-depth analysis. Let me try to respond to a few. Of course, these pointers, they are good comment. We may not have an answer to everything, but over and above what Dr. Otele has said, is that this is a perception survey. And many times we don't go into asking why are you giving the response? Like, for example, we're talking of trust of IBC. We will want to believe that you have your own views about why you trust IBC or not trust IBC. And this calls now, after the perception survey, perhaps more in-depth analysis or qualitative analysis by interested stakeholders for purposes of unearthing some of the questions that we might be having here. Why? But if I may look at the question on 2017 voter turnout, we would ask, why did people not vote? And we had a variety of reasons. Maybe that did not come out. We did not present it, which give, especially when we are looking at the youth. When you talk to people, and I'll talk as a pedestrian, we expect the picture even to be gloomy. Many people are saying they don't see the value in their voting. So come August this year, we are likely even to see more voter apathy than perhaps was the case in 2017. So it's a call for the institutions related, and those are in election, to come up and try to up the game. Because when Kenyans feel like my vote doesn't count, then we go back to our political science 101. Why do I vote, right? How do I exercise my democracy? Is it only when my candidate wins? Is that the democracy? Or is it to feel I'll cast my vote whether my candidates win or not? I think voter education, civic education is what is needed in large scale as we gear up for the August election. I said that the data we've collected from the 2,400 population sample is spread across country, and we are able to generalize at 95% confidence level at with a margin error of 2%. However, we have collected data from different regions, and we know the regions which used to be there. We call them provinces. Now we have counties. But if you disaggregate this data by county or by region, as it were, then the margin of error increases significantly. And therefore, that's why we don't present data on regional variation. But we do understand that most of these variables that we have looked at, including the problems or the most pressing problems, they could be variation across regions. But since these are not constitutional region, the best we can go is county, but then the population in each of the counties become lower to enable us do results that we can statistically have confidence in. The other question that my sister asked is about the PWD, and we appreciate that. And I would say that even as we look at people with special need, the question would be how many of them constitute the population. Remember, the identification of a respondent will be subjected to the population number, and therefore, if we are 49 million, each of the Kenyans, if we are all adult, would be 1 out of 49 million. I don't know what percentage that could be. So any inclusion of people with disability could be by random chance. So we may not have a very big sample of people with disability to allow us deal with this as a specific cohort. But definitely in our sample, you can see some of the issues of access to government services coming out, issues of access to public services, and literature tells us that we have people living with disability are likely to be affected differently. Did we measure corruption, or did we give indicators of corruption? My brother from Taxpayer Association is that we again had a list and would ask you as a person, what do you think ought to be looked at, or what do you think is a major problem in our country and that government would need? Of course, the definition or the listing could vary, and we didn't read the option to people, so it's us to mark based on what they say. Many of Kenyans would say, tengeneza uchumi, right? Address corruption, right? Ufisadi umezidi. And that's how we applied to determine which among the many categories that was going to fall. Whether this is related to taxation and corruption for people to talk about management, I think it's the next level of analysis that can tell us now, given all these problems, do we see correlation between management of the economy and corruption? Do we see infrastructure supply or public service supply vis-a-vis the feeling about the government ability? But what this survey tells us is that there's a lot of consistency across time, across region, that enable us to draw some important and critical decision about the population that we're looking at. So after this result, what next is a good question, and this is our starting point. We share so that we can get more visibility in the media, among stakeholders, but we will also be organizing specific events with people dealing with a specific issue. I know IBC was invited, but as we all imagine, they are very busy at this point. So what we can do as an institution, as Afrobarometer, is also to seek audience with them. I like the pointer about the political parties, which we can also look at, because Kenyans are fed up with political parties. Every time everyone is waking up, you form your party and expect following. What we are ending up doing is confusing citizens. I don't know how many of us have ever checked in eCitizen platform to know which party you belong to. And if you ask yourself, did you ever apply? I think this, if you go to Google eCitizen, you'll find, I found myself, I think by the virtue of my name, registered in Jubilee from 2007, yet political party Jubilee was formed in 2017. So, so you can look, I think the only party that has survived longest in the recent past is ODM from 2005, right? So you'll find that you're registered to a party, but do I feel closer to that party? By ideologies, by association, by affiliation. So if you ask me, I would say maybe I don't belong to any, but the records may be showing something different. So what we are saying is that in 2014, there was a very high level of party affiliation, which is declining over time. Maybe political parties are losing meaning among Kenyans. They don't see value because they don't hold ideologies. They don't have philosophies. Perhaps many times we form political parties just to win an election. And we cannot be sure that a party formed for this particular election will win. Will be there in the next election. And this is what the message we are drawing from our data, that affiliation is declining. Actually, if you listen to one of our political scientists, Professor Kanyinga, says that since KANU exited power, there's no party. Of course, the same people may win election, but there's no single party that has won election twice, right? Looking from NAC to PNU to TNA and Jubilee. So we don't know where we are heading. And this in itself is a source of confusion among Kenyans. And maybe that's why they don't feel specifically associated with any. In terms of trust for institution, our trust was not just about political processes. It's to ask about trust in an institution. So it was not trusting it to run election, but if we have IBC, how much do Kenyans trust it for whatever it's formed to do? That's about election, and that's our interest. In religious leaders, even in the president, it's not the president per se as a person, but that office of the presidency. So that's the trust we're looking for among different institutions. And that tells us that, again, across time, across rural-urban divide, the trust in IBC, which we have lagged out because of its declining trust, is coming out very, very outraged. John, you're very right. We have data that compares, and definitely we should not be comparing ourselves with ordinary. Perhaps that's a good observation. But as I mentioned at the beginning, Kenya is among the very first countries that did this survey. I think in Tanzania, it's underway, Abel, and so is Uganda. So their data is not out. And as I said, the round goes for 2 years. So we have until end of this year to complete a round when we'll have data. And this data can help us to compare if we are looking for the big brothers, countries like South Africa, Ghana, that we know in terms of progress, they seem to be more democratic, if I was to say that, and see how we compare, not only on issues of political, but also issues of economy and governance. I think the issue of youth voter turnout is a real problem that needs to be addressed, and we need to start laying down strategy for helping this institution, or to try and woo youths who look very desperate and not knowing where to head, come out and cast their vote. I think we will stop there. I hope I have addressed all that my colleague Oscar did. So just clarification, but we are open to more discussion. My colleagues are also here. So back to you, Chair.
Are there further questions? All right, okay.
I want to throw spanner in the works on youth participation. Can we also start thinking in terms of the refusal by young people, or who we are calling youth, is actually a form of participation? Just like the way we talk about people not getting jobs in the formal sector, so they go start Juakali or the informal sector as an option. So youth refusing to vote is actually a form of political participation. It's a protest. They are trying to say that old people like Njoka and all the other old people over 35 have not been engaging young people properly. So they are actually exiting. It is called the exit option in participation. So the issue is, should we as researchers be recommending policy-wise ways of involving the youth more, probably by force or whatever, or should we respect their exit option? The same way these days we are saying the informal economy is the center. Yeah, is the center. It's Juakari and your center, Sasa. Not these jobs we have in universities and media and NGOs and other things, because we are minority. People who are working in the informal economy, after they never got into the formal, are actually now even making it better than those who are in the formal economy. So maybe we might have a society where we need to respect the non-participation of young people, and then they are also going to have their own model of leadership. Because I am actually starting to distrust non-youth like myself. Because when you see the way we have run even our families, probably it is not the best model. So perhaps the generation Z, the millennials, are telling us that we need to respect their model of participation, and maybe the dialogue should go there. And we know whether we want to become more relevant or we want to remain isolated, because the youth are isolating the non-youth. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to comment on people with disabilities. Maybe I think how about we be more intentional on just gathering their data, because while in the field we came across them, because they have their unique needs in segmenting, as opposed to just piling them under the gender slots like men and women. We can just put the same way like in the data we've segmented the men and women. We can also have a slot for people with disability so that we can appreciate. I think what she was raising regarding people with disability was not including them in the literature, but also giving them, honoring their stories and acknowledging that this came from a person with disability. Maybe we can just factor in our segments.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tele, or is there anything you want to add? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to agree with Joker, Mwalimu there. I just want to agree. I think we need to start thinking of resistance, like what he's saying, as a form of participation, and also as a form of agency that young people are pushing, and not just young. I think, of course, young people, women, I'm not quite sure it's agency or it's patriarchy, but with youth, I can clearly see and agree with him that it's time maybe we decentered even our own research to start thinking about young people and what they're bringing in and as agency and as important. So it means also restructuring, not restructuring, but rethinking or adding questions that don't just almost make you look bad if you're not into elections. So it's almost decentering this and rethinking. This is a form of agency, actually. It's a form of resistance that these people are saying. And you can also see in terms of education, the older people, the 35 and above, are the only ones who are voting seriously, like 80%. Young people are at 65%. And also these are the young people who've benefited from free education or free primary, maybe. So it means maybe they are more aware and they're able to make more choices. So it's just to agree that I think that's very interesting. And also I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going on between 2014 to 2017? Because we have the same regime. Between 2014, it's Uhuru and Ruto. Nothing really, it's not that we had a new regime, but why you can see all the variables have decreased over time in terms of confidence. And yet they seem to have invested so much, especially this last year, in infrastructure projects.
I would like to make a final comment with regards to the PWDs. There is no, when Ken Bias was doing the data collection in 2019, one of the issues that came out was that there was no clear guideline that shows how disability data can be collected. That is one of the issues that we have with that. But from what Ken Bias collected was that we have about close to 2 million people who are living with disability. So I think 2 million forms a good percentage of, because the kind of data that they collected, it was for about 5 years of age and above. So I think that data is important because most of them, because right now we are speaking in a society where the PWDs are enabled. PWDs can be able to make political decisions. And PWDs matter in terms of their economic participation and all that. Corruption affects them, economic stress affects them and all that. So I think it's an important component that should speak to any data collection. Also, not forgetting the SDGs. As a country, we are a signatory to the SDGs 2030 goals. And the driving theme for that is leaving no one behind. So if you're not including the disability data, we are leaving about close to 2 million people behind in terms of development. And this is the development data. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Oh, yes, we have another.
Yeah, I want to agree with the two who have contributed on PWDs. I think we just need to be intentional and deliberate. Yeah, we just need to be intentional and deliberate in including them. And IDS, as a research institution, we can come up with a methodology that ensures that we get the views of these people so that they're not excluded, because they also have the rights, it's their human rights to be heard and to be listened to. And also it will start by, for example, this forum. We could have had a sign language interpreter. That's one way of starting, and we don't have, which means we don't have, we are assuming we don't have any person with disability in this room right now, which is very unfortunate.
Thank you very much. Yes. Now, when you talk about youth withdrawing, and you talk about the agency, I think you need to organize that agency so that it comes to the attention of the government that you are actually organizing yourselves alongside, and you are responding in terms of a protest by not voting. But if you just, keep away, not voting, who will know that you are protesting? So I'll give my colleagues again the microphone to.
Thanks, Doc. Yeah. Yes, once again, I wish to extend my appreciation to the concerns that have been raised by participants. Yes, beginning with the first, concern. I can't agree more with my senior colleague, Mwalimu Njoka, that this is a perspective that we need to look at matters to do with youth participation. Is it refusal, a form of protest? And my take is that actually, Mwalimu, you're right. Participation itself as a concept, it's quite slippery, in terms of how we come to understand the concept. In our understanding of it, we tend to see it as, take it as meaningful participation, and we assess it in terms of issues to do with the inclusivity, control of decision making, and of course the influence in the same. That is at a higher level if you look at that ladder of public participation, level 6 and 7. But also note that a political participation, you can participate that through being part of a political institution, taking part in political process, but also more importantly, involvement in civic association, and protest comes in as a form of protest. But as I earlier mentioned in my first response, particularly on youths and their relation to vote turnout, there are a number of factors at play. General disillusionment about the performance of government on a number of issues, particularly touching on youth, like lack of employment, stability, and so on, being one of major factors at play as far as voters, their vote turnout is concerned. So I agree, this is a perspective that we need to get deeper and try to expose that refusal. 3 participants have passionately talked about people with disability, and our manager here, I'm sure he will be more interested to offer some perspective about how the questionnaire is designed and whether there is opportunity in the next survey to include people with disability. I agree with that concern. It will actually be useful for the study in future survey to obtain a public perception about this segment of Kenyan population, how they think a number of governance issues. 2014, 2021, same government, same actors, but things seem to be changing. And I agree. This is the whole question about where we have, where we began, looking at governance issues, presenting specific findings on political parties in terms of how citizens interact with the political parties. As I said earlier, political parties are critical components of our institutions by the fact that they compete to win state power, and whoever wins then proceeds to form government. You remember when the Uhuru Ruto team, promised, very lofty issues in their manifesto transformation agenda that was expected to start in 2013. If you look at that very colorful manifesto, and the question as political scientists, we have been keen to analyze to what extent have those manifestos, those pledges been converted into policy action. I recently completed an assignment on analysis of political parties' manifestos, I was a bit generous in my analysis in terms of looking at how those pledges have been achieved and looking at, whether it's fully achieved, partially achieved. And the conclusion was not so good that virtually political parties' pledges, none at all is fully achieved by the fact and how those pledges are even drafted, in a very general statements without being clear in terms of what we need to achieve at this particular point in time. So what we see then is political actors, they tend to raise the expectation of citizens at the time of election. But then in reality, when it comes to implementation, things start going wayward. And this is what now we tend to experience: frustration, expectation minus frustration. A number of these issues are not meant, and what we begin experiencing is, general disillusionment with the governance system. And as you have rightly seen in our findings, that is evident. Thanks, and I wish to invite Prof, if you have additional view on this, and even our manager here. Thanks.
Thank you. I think our presenters have actually done great justice to some of the questions that were asked. I just wish to add something little on the issue of the matter of disabilities, because it's emerging as critical. And the reason that I want to comment on it is because it's a methodological question in terms of how we are going to look at it. When Professor Kamau was making his presentation in terms of the methods that we use, the design that we adopt in this opinion survey is a randomized method or design. What it means is that when we link up with the bureau, the team from the bureau, we give them the parameters that we want, and then they select a sample for us on a randomized basis. Now, the only aspects that go into those parameters are actually our levels of stratification. We want to see issues of gender, we want to see issues of regions, we're interested in seeing issues of residency, urban, rural, and we have not particularly been deliberate in trying to capture the aspects that relate to the people with disabilities. From the discussion, clearly it's an important component, and when we do these surveys, prior to that, we normally engage stakeholders. It would be interesting, and it is something that we welcome, that probably in our next cycle of survey, we may need to engage the stakeholders, team like Madam Munyango, who work in this particular area, so that we can get to understand, we can get to know, share notes on how well can we incorporate a design that captures the issues, the evaluations, and the aspirations of people with disabilities. As we stand now, the basis of our sample design does not go strictly or is not deliberate in capturing the issues that relate specifically to people with disabilities, because the assumption is when we carry out this randomization and we pick the eventual sample, when we get to people in the households and we get people with disabilities and they are selected, they will be interviewed. But of course, clearly we can tell that we do not have variables or questions in the questionnaire that speak uniquely to the experiences that are particular to persons with disabilities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, as always, for your very good comment. And I think these are good pointers in terms of how we move on with this work. Now, about the youth. do we take a new policy angle and respect non-participation, right, among the youth? It's a good model. But then it said that if you don't elect or vote for your leaders, then you wait others. It's like you are voting for your opponent. I think when you listen to social media, youth are the most vibrant in terms of complaining about what is not being done. So unless we have a new definition of democracy that we allude to, then I hear you about the exit option or an agency, as resistance as an agency from Jockey and Joker. But again, we cannot just say, let's not deal with our responsibility as Kenyan citizens, because again, we'll be leaving to others who may not be having or may not be as enlightened as ourselves in terms of understanding the future of this country. We always say that the country is going to be left in the hands of the youth because they were, I don't know whether the tomorrow has come, they were leaders of tomorrow. But even looking at the current trend, there are many young people who have expressed interest in terms of seeking elective position. This means that this interest that the country can be run better when we have people who have stake in the country. So in as much as we appreciate the non-participation as a form of participation or a form of governance, I think there's room, in my view, to try and persuade. Perhaps it's lack of awareness. It's about civic education that has brought in this disillusionment among the participants. The other question that was raised earlier was whether with about 71 political parties in the country, are we not having too many? And the question we asked Dansam was not whether we need this number, but to see in a context where there are more political parties, do Kenyans feel it's a better way of governing the country? Or we should go back maybe to what we had prior to 92, when there was only one single party, so that you either belong to KANU or you belong to KANU. So that we have one party, and therefore people belong to that party with or without choices. So the question is, and this is what we're saying, many people identify with formation of many parties, that's a multi-party democracy, and so that they have choices of selecting government. But then when they ask if we have like 71 parties and only one party is emerging as a lead in the election, do we have a problem with that? Again, Kenyans were very categorical that it doesn't matter even if it's one party being elected, as long as it's democratically done. We can have the KANU rule like we did 1963 to 92, as long as it was democratically elected. We know the challenges of that, but Kenyans are of the view that the more democratic space is expanded when we have more parties in place. The question, and I think this is what alludes to the issue of PWD, is that it's a very difficult phenomenon to measure. Sometimes we might think the physically challenged, and but the whole terminology is quite big, and so it would mean introducing a question for people to define whether they are living in any form of disability or not. And we normally have in our standardized questionnaire some country-specific questions, and would welcome this also when we are looking at our next round in terms of bringing about maybe questions that are pertinent to Kenya and looking at this particular model. We have an allowance of about 6 or so questions that can be specific to Kenya. Like when we are talking of election party system, you know our system is different from others, then we can infuse a few more questions, and perhaps that's the way we can capture the PWDs. Otherwise, having a complete module or having a targeted population or intentional population in data collection is going to, again, throw questions into our randomization process. So perhaps is to ask views from whoever we get in the survey about perception of disability, if they are not, so that that can help us in terms of randomization and also not, again, running away from the process itself. The question of what is happening between 2014 and 2021, I think when the Jubilee, was it TNA government was elected, then, and it had RP or URP? No, the Jubilee coalition. That was when we had one candidate under TNA and another one under URP. So those, I think Kenyans were quite happy that now the new constitution was in place, that brought in a lot of accountability, that would transform this country in terms of devolution. But as time went by, I think service delivery and content with the way the government was running affairs was dwindling. We had the 2017 election that was contested and nullified, making us go back to voting in October the same year. And then there was a lot of discontent in terms of how the government, how the Jubilee Party was going to lead the country. And over time, we are seeing either an increased level of awareness, meaning that we are able to question more and perhaps see the ills more than we could see before. Two, citizens are more engaged in terms of their requirement for participation. I think an important clause that has never been exercised by any form of citizen is the recall clause, right? That if your leaders do not perform, you have a right to move and have them recalled. I think only 2 places have had it being evoked but did not go anywhere because of the threshold that are required for you to recall. So that's why perhaps people are saying, even within the context of new constitution, we are far from realizing our aspiration as democracy. Not to mention the increased incidences of mega corruption, involving devolved institutions, national government, that Kenyans are watching. And this could be a pointer to why confidence in the current government is declining. Last, we know that Jubilee almost got divided 1 year after formation with the handshake that destabilized somewhat the Jubilee Party. And this has gone all the way to where we are, where even the DP can clearly argue with his boss, perhaps something that is a new phenomenon that we would not have expected. So people who might be aligned to one line of divide may see the Jubilee Party as having disintegrated, and this in itself is causing a lot of issues with service delivery. And I think today's headline, where the DP is claiming that he is supposed to get credit also for all the achievement, and then the other side is also saying you did not do much, is something that perhaps as scientists we need to not take kindly, but lightly, but also to see what are the implications of this on service delivery to Kenyans. The handshake, absolutely an important phenomenon in terms of governance in Kenya. So we'd like to stop there and perhaps return the mic to Gideon for further guidance. Thanks.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Do we have any other burning question? Okay. Then we close up. Our time is dwindling.
I think it's good we are recognizing these questions of diversity and inclusion, particularly with regards to persons with a disability. And I think one of the things that Afrobarometer can do is to proactively encourage follow-up research of a qualitative nature on some of these groups. And perhaps that is one of the things, Ambel, we can discuss within the EU project, the one I'm managing, so that then we encourage students. We somehow get a way of encouraging our students to do like what last year Maranga graduated with a project paper on persons with disability and mobility and how it affects their enterprises in Nairobi. And those could be pieces of research which can be picked from Afrobarometer. And I don't know whether you could also announce whether you still encourage people to write papers and whether and they get a little incentive for it, because that can also push some of the civil society organization members who are here, or even journalists. These people in the media, they can do investigative journalism through some of these groups and proactively, because we are in the age of inclusion. And proactively, we must be intentional about it and about our context. I would like to also point out that Afrobarometer, covering 35 countries and coordinated from the US, is still a neo-colonial process. And we are also in the age of decolonization. And the age of decolonization, we are arguing that we also need to decolonize the process, because those telling us to decolonize are still colonizing us, and they are controlling us. When we sit here and we take tea at Lillian Towers and eat lunch here and get jobs from money which is coming from all these donors we are mentioning, let us not forget that these donors don't want us to be free. They want to control Africa increasingly. And so we must become very, very intentional and contextualize our way of doing things. And we may not necessarily differ. I have always questioned Afrobarometer standard way of doing things, okay? And the reason why I question it is because we need to contextualize the work that we do. And I would encourage particularly students and civil society members to come out more strongly and challenge us, challenge some of these conceptual frameworks we are using, because they are old, tired, and not very useful for Africa. And if we don't resist that way, then we are going to have a problem. And I also want to insist, for people who are resisting like youth as an agency, we also need even to encourage that kind of research. What model of democracy would the youth want? And that can be drawn from looking at these figures where young people are refusing, elites are refusing to get into voting. Okay, you find many people are older, probably, and less education. Something is wrong. There is a questioning of things. And let's encourage people who can do this research which deviates from the mainstream to do it. Otherwise, we are going to lose relevance in Africa. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Anne Kamau, also from IDS, and I think Joka has almost said everything I wanted to say. Kenya is a signatory to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, especially Article 6, which is about human rights, and Article 27, which is about inclusion and economic representation. So I think, like what Joka is saying, we really have to talk to KNBS when you're doing the next round of Afrobarometer. The same way you're inputting a variable on gender, there should be a variable on persons with disability or PWDs. And their variety, it's not homogeneous, their variety. We have a lot of students now even being trained at the University of Nairobi on sign language interpretation, so we cannot say we don't have any emulators. So I think we have to really know how to capture them. And a lot of work is also going on inclusion and diversity, and I think as IDS, we must really also go in this direction. Thank you. And also, what I wanted to also mention is that there are also structures of person with disability through which we can correct data to the village level, to the household level. So again, we just need to work with our networks to be able to know where to begin.
Yes, thank you very much. Our time has run out, and we thank you very much for your participation. It was very insightful and very engaging. I will now invite Dr. Nelima Barasa to give us the final remarks. Then we break for lunch. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much. I now have the task of standing in for Professor Mitula, who had also stood in for Professor Kanyinga. So I know how she was feeling, big shoes to fill. So she's the co-partner director, and I am one of the researchers. So I would want to give some closing remarks and a vote of thanks. My name is Dr. Laura Barasa from the Department of Economics and Development Studies, University of Nairobi. So some of the pressing issues that have arisen from our discussion and the presentation, we noted 3 of them. There's an issue with the management of the economy. We also have corruption being highlighted as a major issue, and unemployment. We have also had a very lively discussion on collecting data on the perception of persons living with disabilities. Also, what's interesting is the youth participation or their lack of non-participation. So these issues, we have taken note of these and all the other issues that are important. And as a researcher, one of the best things that happens to us is when we sit and we listen to your questions and we are able to think of a future research agenda. So your participation is very, very welcome and appreciated. So on behalf of Afrobarometer, I would like to recognize the presence of the members of civil society in attendance, the representatives from the National Taxpayers Association. We also have representatives from Zalendo Trust and the Institute of Economic Affairs. All the media houses that have covered this event, thank you very much for your time. We have members of faculty from USIU, and as well from University of Nairobi, that's the Department of Economics and Institute of Development Studies. We also thank the enumerators who made it here. Without you, we would not have this data to talk about. As for the presenters of the day, thank you very much for putting in a lot of effort, which is noticeable. We have Professor PK, as we like to call him. He is the Afrobarometer National Investigator and Associate Director of IDS UON. We also have Dr. Otela, thank you very much. He's a co-national investigator and a lecturer of political science at the UON. Thank you very much, Dr. Onyango, for distilling some of this information for us. He's also a co-national investigator from political science, University of Nairobi. We also want to thank the core Afrobarometer team, who have been in charge of organizing this event and everything else that has been going on since last year and even before, as we plan to roll out the data collection, putting the data together for us to be able to analyze it. And lastly, we want to thank the donor organizations for supporting this work. Without their funding, we will not be here. But we also take in your remarks that it is important for us as Africans to come up with our own solutions and sources of funding and not always depend on other external donors. So here I have with me some important announcements. We have some upcoming events. Please take note of this date, save this date. Our next event is on the 2nd of March. And we shall be discussing topics relating to the economy, education, in particular the CBC system, and we shall also talk about health, specifically COVID-19. So I think this will be important for you. Another event, we have a seminar from the Institute of Development Studies. This one will be on the 10th of March. It is online from 2 to 4, and it will be given by the CEO of Afrobarometer. That is Professor Asonka. So kindly take note of this. And we also urge you to take interest in our data. And please visit www.afrobarometer.org and just acquaint yourself with the kind of things that we do and the kind of data that is available for you to work with, and as well interrogate, and for you to give suggestions on areas we can improve on. So I'd like to thank you once again for your time, participation, and engagement, and we hope to see you in our upcoming events. So with that, I invite you to join us for lunch before you depart, and I wish you to all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barasa. I don't want to add more, but some information about lunch is that it is served second floor. I think that's the pool side, but we have lunch vouchers that are available with Anne, so you can pick one as you go. But also to say that IDS Afrobarometer team is available just in case for the press you would like to clarify something. We will also have a series of press releases that are available, and we can share with that with you on what we have disseminated today, as well as the upcoming event.